soup. Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me we have some more RPG horror stories. Nothing much to really say, just want to give a reminder that I'm experimenting with some YouTube Shorts format where I'm answering y'all's questions. So if you have any questions to me or about D&D in general, answer your question there and I'll answer it as a YouTube Short. It just gives me an excuse to experiment with the YouTube Short format and try some new things, which I'm actually pretty excited about. Anyway, let's get some RPG horror stories for today. Blair tried to dictate my setting to me. Had a former friend that I once invited to a homebrew campaign. He'd always had a lot of problems with socializing, but this campaign highlighted how bad it was. He was a major gamer, which I was too at the time, but it started to become apparent he's played them a bit too much. Seriously bad main character syndrome. Guy was dead set on being either Dragonborn or a Sith, like from Skyrim and Star Wars. I must have told him over 10 times that despite being a sci fantasy setting, that this was not D&D or a Star Wars, and that he had to pick one of the playable species and classes I'd made. He'd just get crappier each new time he asked. Oh, D&D. Okay, hold on. Whoa, hold on. You invite this friend to a campaign you're running, a sci fantasy, which sounds fun as hell, that have their own custom classes and races and all that other stuff, but instead of the guy just picking one of the options available, he decides making it his affair that he can't play a D&D Dragonborn or a Sith from Star Wars? Dude, you get invited to a game to play with your friends that they're running, you get to be a player in a new thing, you get a chance to try something new for once, try a different class, a different race, a different universe, all in all, a different fantasy in general, but instead you're gonna throw a hissy fit and a problem because you can't play a D&D Dragonborn or Star Wars Sith? Dude, then play D&D or go play a Star Wars campaign or whatever. The guy should have just said no to the campaign invitation if that's what was on the table instead of just complaining about it. Simple as that. The conversation would have been very simple. Can I be a Dragonborn or a Sith? No, okay, I'm not playing. Thanks for the invite. I'll see you guys later. Simple as that. And would have no issues. But no, he decided to still stick around and apparently complain more about this. He spent the whole rest of the campaign bitching about not having a lightsaber or being able to breathe fire. Then you don't play this campaign. You already were told you can't be a Sith from Star Wars and you can't be a Dragonborn from D&D. Why is he still complaining over this? It's like going to an ice cream shop and complaining they don't have burritos, but he still decided to stay in the ice cream shop to complain to the employees about them not having burritos and begging them to make a burrito instead of going to the burrito place across the street. What is this madness? Why are you doing this? Just go get a burrito from across the street. Clearly you don't want ice cream. Why are you complaining over this? Just go play a D&D game, play a Star Wars game or whatever where you could be a Sith. But the guy just stuck there. He just sits there complaining and whinging. I want to stay here and complain that I can't have a lightsaber and I can't breathe fire. Literally the worst kind of person in existence. Eventually we ended up stopping it early and started a whole new fresh campaign without him. I felt like a weight had been lifted from the whole table. Honestly, you guys probably should have kicked him very early on, but I'm glad you did because I feel like that's a bullet dodge at this point. The guy ended up having a falling out with his family shortly after his friends. According to his older brother, this dude would refuse to get a job and got about a year behind on rent to his own dad. So his family kicked him out. He refused to go, they called the police, and the dude attempted to angrily argue with the cops over eviction laws. That landed him in county jail. That's a whole other thing to talk about, but if the game doesn't have what you want, don't stick around to complain about it. Just don't do that. Anyway, let's get to the next story for today. Player derails entire campaign by writing a character that's impossible to work with. Hi all, this is my first time posting here, and hopefully my last. It's about a very short-lived Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign that happened a few years ago. I want to preface this is the fact that we are all somewhat immature during this campaign, and I regret about how we handled it. However, given that only the problem player had actual problems, I'd say most of the issues stem from his behavior. The characters here are the DM, caught in the middle of the conflict while juggling one of her first serious campaigns, Paladin, me, a naive sheltered character who believed in the good of everyone, Cleric, part of the same church as my Paladin, witnessed everything in his story but took more of a backseat role, Rogue, well-meaning but dishonest thief and out of character took one of the most direct roles in trying to communicate with a problem player, Warlock, Hexblade Warlock who was stoic and kind of quiet, but never adversarial, Druid, the problem player, Circle of the Moon Druid, self-explanatory, For some background, the DM, the cleric, and the rogue and I are all best friends of several years and have done multiple campaigns together at this point. We're very RP heavy, and because we all know each other outside of TTRPGs, we introduced our character to each other informally before session 1. We'd done a few campaigns together, and at one point the Warlock joined us as well. But it was mostly Monster of the Week style campaign, and we were excited to do a longer D&D one together, with the DM proposing Waterdeep Dragon Heist as a good fit for our party style. We all started drafting our characters and talking about them, and it seemed like it was shaping up to be a pretty normal campaign for all of us. Introduced the DM's friend at the time, the Druid, who wanted to join our campaign. We were all on board with it at the start, but things devolved as soon as the character was shown to us. The first red flag should have been that the Druid's character was introduced as a sword that does whatever he wants because he lives in the woods and has no moral compass, with a lot of jokes about eating children and killing people. To be clear, the rest of us aren't inherently opposed to chaotic characters or in-party disagreements. However, our hope is that those disagreements have a purpose. In this case, as I was playing an idealistic paladin, I was hoping that my character and the druid could learn something from each other without things getting too awkward. My expectations, as I would later learn, were a little too high. I mean, I don't know what you expected. Like, what can you learn from a druid that likes to eat children, kill people, or the favorite recipe on how to marinate a child or something? If the guy is clearly going for like a more chaotic character that doesn't mesh with the party, then it's something DM should have probably talked to them about. If they generally seem like the odd one out that feels like they're gonna kind of grind the party cohesion to a halt and make some friction, I suppose, then it's something you probably should have covered ahead of time, and maybe you talked him down from the ledge and saying maybe you just don't add the part where you like to eat babies and kill people for fun. Maybe you like to play tricks on people, you know, something a little more lighthearted or something that will steer them in the direction where they can work well cohesively with the party without becoming a problem. But maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. Let's go ahead and continue with this. Fast forward to our first session. It was low stakes, but there was something unmistakably off about it. Session 1 awkwardness is inevitable, especially in a party that has little common ground in morality, background, or goals. However, it felt less like awkwardness and more like genuine tension, which I had no experience in a campaign thus far. Felt like nobody in the party could take advantage of a plot hook or an RP opportunity, and looking back, a big reason seemed to be the presence of the druid. Likely because trying to work together with a character that has no morals or motive is very difficult. I mean, on one hand, you got your group of friends that you can work really well together and y'all mesh really well because you play really well together, but then you have this rogue element, this chaotic element, kind of twists things on its head, and it's just really difficult to kind of get a gauge on how to proceed or interact. I mean, I can understand why you'll be uncomfortable if he's like a complete loose cannon wildcard that doesn't really mesh well with your party. The second and final session is where things started to really go downhill though. It was a dungeon crawl through a narrow corridor, and this is where the problem arose. During one encounter, the cleric, the rogue, and I were fighting in one part of the room, leaving the warlock and the druid together to handle the other. The warlock was standing directly behind the druid, rolled a natural 1 on his attack. As a general rule, we play with critical failures, but they're more for flavor than for punishment. And in this case, the DM ruled that the warlock hit the druid on accident while trying to hit the enemy. It did a small amount of damage, but nothing substantial enough to reduce the druid to downed or even low HP. The two of them were the strongest party members and would easily be able to shrug off the mistake and handle the rest of the fight had the druid had not gone absolutely ballistic. Immediately in the middle of combat, the druid used the turn to shift into a bear and began attacking the warlock. The response from the rest of the PCs ranged from confusion to anger, with the DM trying to de-escalate the situation and talk the druid out of it to no avail. Understandably, the warlock began fighting back to defend himself, but it just made the druid more angry. The rest of us tried to think of a way to de-escalate the situation, but our limited spell slots and resources have been used with the expectation that we were fighting sewer monsters, not the other players. Eventually, after enough of out-of-character arguing, the druid finally relented and we all moved on. The session was tense after that, and nobody left feeling good about it. The rest of us tried to bring it up over text afterwards, but we didn't get word from the druid. All he said in response to anything that night was expressing anger at a joke I made, but I refused to acknowledge any of our genuine complaints about the session. It could be potentially that the druid just doesn't see fault in himself, or maybe he sees you guys as adversaries because for whatever reason he just doesn't mesh well with y'all, and y'all already buddy and friends out of game and stuff. There's a lot of stupid explanations about this sort of thing, and I'm not on druid's side in the slightest, but whatever's going on, probably Probably the druid doesn't see himself as an issue or a problem in the slightest, because why would they? It's everybody else's fault. Am I out of touch? Am I not a good cohesion for this party? No, it's the rest of them that are wrong. I'm gonna rip on their jokes and stuff, but never address their complaints, because I can't do anything wrong. I'm a druid after all. I am me. Not necessarily because they're druid. It's just because it's just a bad player, the jerk. They literally saw an accidental natural 1 critical fail as with tiny bit of damage inflicted on them as such an offense that they have to attack immediately. Why? What's the point? It's your party. The DM ruled that it was an accident. It was an accident. You don't have to attack your party members for it. But no, the druid decides they want to do what they want to do, because what they want to do is the most important thing for them. You really wish the DM would have noticed it from the first session and would have made this point, being like, Iko, yeah, this definitely is a clash. This is just not going to work, because this is a perfect moment to start decide as a DM. This is not going to work. We either try to solve it or somebody's going to have to be removed. And clearly the druid, being the new element, probably going to be asked to get out. Beyond that, the druid was an a-hole to anyone that challenged him. Although I was never the target for PvP, I remember getting a lot of passive aggressiveness directed my way for playing a character that was more pacifist than the rest of the party. I mean, even if it's not PvP per se, you are getting targeted by him. I think he just has it out for everybody at this point, which is kind of a jerk thing to do. Initially, I was set on my Author Redemption subclass, but the murder hoboing and PvP in the session derailed my excitement. I considered scrapping my idea and started looking into Ancients, so it wouldn't cause even more tension both in and out of campaign. As both the DM and the rogue, if they thought a redemption would be an issue, with both of them saying that despite the session being a mess, they wanted me to explore it. The only person who had an out-of-character issue was the druid. I understand not wanting to play with a buzzkill, but is that just unreasonable for a fellow PC to not want to murder people? I don't think it's anything unreasonable. Play whatever subclass you want to play. I mean, at the end of the day, right, if you go for a more pacifist approach, that doesn't mean that you're gonna completely ignore combat. It just means you take diplomacy first, sword second. Sometimes it's perfectly fine to try diplomacy, especially if you're built around charisma, like Paladin, in order to try to resolve the issues before it goes guns up, buns out. Ultimately, it didn't matter. We were hoping for a resolution, but it never happened. A few days after the session, the druid, for reasons I still don't understand, flipped out on all of us and declared that he would not be showing up to any more D&D games. We tried to ask him why, but I didn't get a response. He fell out with us as friends for personal reasons not long after, but we haven't been in contact since. It might sound mean, but I'm saying good. They did you a favor. They removed themselves out of this mess of a party because they were the ones that created the mess. Clearly, the rest of you guys work really well in cohesion, but the druid was the odd one out. Maybe they felt awkward over the whole thing. Maybe they started realizing that the rest of y'all mesh really well and they just couldn't mesh in. But instead of talking to y'all like a people, they decided to just blame you guys for everything wrong going on, because clearly it couldn't be their fault. It has to be the rest of the party. I couldn't be at fault. I am perfect. I am magnanimous. They're all bad and stupid and stinky, and the warlock and paladin and the rogue, they all suck and stuff, and the DM is bad. And the kind of self-centered mindset I just can't agree with. And people that do it unironically without having any sort of self-realization, it's just annoying, because somebody can just actually see themselves like full of ego, see themselves as like they can't do anything wrong. And like, really? You have no ability to self-reflect? You have no ability to look into yourself and realize you're being a jerk? That was the end of Waterdeep. We could have continued on without him, but all of us agreed that there was no excitement left for the campaign and no reason to. So we called it there and started a PBTA Urban Shadows campaign. That one turned out to be a lot more fun, and somehow in a twist of fate, the entire party ended up morally devoid and ambivalent towards murder. Funny how that works out. Yeah, because you guys have chemistry. Whether you guys are playing lawfully good, lawfully evil party, whatever kind of party you're playing, whether it be goody-goody two-shoes, diplomacy first, sword later, or complete and utter evil shitheads, you guys have a good cohesion as people, and you play really well together. You guys are friends out of game. Of course you're gonna mesh well together. The druid clearly didn't mesh whatsoever. I'm glad you guys had a fun time after the Waterdeep campaign, and hope we can come back to Waterdeep with maybe new characters, just not with the druid, because clearly the druid sucks here. As for why the druid is having his issues, honestly don't know, nor do I really care. The druid gave you guys an out by removing themselves before they had to be kicked out, and as far as I can tell, that's as good enough a solution as any. If a problem removes itself, then the problem removes itself. Just keep playing and keep having fun. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.